This is India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's start the show with headlines this evening. First up, India slams Bangladesh over Hindu priest's arrest. India says it's deeply concerned by the arrest and the denial of bail. Nepal Prime Minister says no loans to be signed during his upcoming China visit. Is China's BRI project now in troubled waters? Donald Trump pledges big tariffs on China, Canada and Mexico. Donald Trump vows a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico and an additional 10% on Chinese goods. India marks the 16th anniversary of the horrific 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, remembering the victims and honouring the bravery of India's security forces. The coordinated attacks carried out by 10 armed terrorists from Pakistan over 4 days in 2008 claimed 160 lives and left 300 injured. India marks a historic milestone as it observes the 75th anniversary of the adoption of its constitution, with year-long celebrations set to unfold under the campaign theme Hamara Samvidhan, Hamara Swabhiman. President Draupadi Murmu released a commemorative coin and postage stamp on the occasion. All right, on to our big story that we are discussing right now on India Global. Chinmoy Krishna Das Brahmachari, the spokesperson of the Bangladesh United Sanatan Awakening Alliance, has been presented in court in Chittagong, and in fact he's been denied bail in Bangladesh. Sources say his bail was denied due to grounds that are not yet clear. The Hindu priest is at the forefront of movement against atrocities against Hindus in Bangladesh. In fact, he was sent to the Chattogram jail from Dhaka overnight amidst demands for his immediate release. The BJP in West Bengal is organizing protests after former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, was forced to flee Bangladesh. Extremist Islamic forces have now targeted minorities, particularly Hindus, in the last 3 months. Let's get in my colleague Mohammad Ghazali to fill us in with the very latest as far as this case is concerned, which has actually sent shockwaves, Ghazali, around the Hindu community both in Bangladesh and around the world.
Yeah, what we have been told that the Magistrate Court of Qazi Shariful Islam has denied bail to this Hindu priest, and the charges, sources are confirming that in one of these protests back in October, when he was charged with this crime of treason, he was accused of disrespecting Bangladeshi flag, is what the actual charge is. But the larger picture is that even the Hindu community there in Bangladesh have been pleading the Indian government as well as other agencies to take note of it and pressure the Bangladesh's interim government led by Mr. Yunus to ensure that atrocities against minorities should stop at the earliest. But since August 5, since the regime change in Bangladesh, and a couple of weeks later when Mr. Yunus was handed over the government, it was under intense pressure to ensure that the Awami League supporters of Sheikh Hasina as well as the minorities in Bangladesh don't face any kind of atrocities, but that didn't happen. And almost every week, if I remember correctly, in every press briefing here back in Delhi, the Emmy had categorically rejected all these allegations that India was somewhere fomenting this trouble and kept on appealing the Bangladeshi government there to ensure the safety of minorities, but certainly that hasn't happened. And now this new priest who has been arrested, the scenes outside the court when today as his bail was denied and police was taking him out of the court towards the police station, that is when
stay with us, because I want to stay with us. I want to quickly in fact tell our viewers about the visuals that have come in where those who were protesting the priest's arrest were, in fact there was a crackdown against them that we can play on our screen for our viewers to see. In fact, there was some very violent crackdown that took place as far as the protests that happened from the Hindu community against the arrest of the Hindu priest. All right, Mohammad Ghazali, appreciate you giving us that perspective on what is happening as far as Bangladesh is concerned. All right, Major Rezaul Karim as well as Ayanjit Sen joins me on the broadcast to discuss this in detail. In fact, Ayanjit, let me start with you first. As things stand right now, these are some very disturbing visuals coming in as far as the specific instance of the Hindu priest being arrested, being denied bail, but also more importantly, giving credence to what India has been saying for several months now, which is that the Hindu community is being targeted.
Well, I'd like to say where faith is shattered and homes are reduced to ashes and lives to dust, the Hindus in Bangladesh are definitely facing an unyielding storm of extremism, and what Chinmoy Krishna said, it is not an outspoken stance on any minority rights, but he's also held protests over atrocities against Hindus, but who can organize very peacefully. But unfortunately, he was treated like a terrorist because he had held those protests. And today, at the end of the day, after his arrest, Hindu protests are still continuing. But I think it's yet another dark chapter, as far as the prosecution of the Hindus in Bangladesh go. And there has been a systematic violence. And I wonder what the US government is doing, the administration is doing, because what Hizbullah Tahrir, Jamaat, and Hafaz-e-Islam, these groups are, roaming around the streets of Bangladesh without any fear. And that's something which definitely the current administration in Bangladesh should look into. Otherwise, things are going to go out of hand. And even the Indian Minister of External Affairs has also voiced its concern regarding this. So, it's something which, just because you are speaking, and it's not speaking against any the administration or against any party. He just simply, Chinmoy Krishna just simply said that, we are not with any political party. We want to safeguard, our safeguard, that's the safeguard of safeguarding the Hindus. And that's something which, it's a free speech country.
Let's get in Major Rezaul Karim to respond to that. Major Rezaul Karim, which is that this has shattered the Hindu community and also raises questions once again of targeted attacks.
Assalamu alaikum to everyone in India and also in Bangladesh. Actually, before giving the answer, I just give introduction about actually what is the purpose of ISKCON. Actually, one of the motto of ISKCON is that reawaken their love of all human beings for God. So this is a very good motive that which the ISKCON has as per and this ISKCON belongs to the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, and it is philosophical based is on Sanskrit Bhagavad Gita. So we definitely respect their sentiment, but what is happening in Bangladesh, that is surprisingly a bit different. That doesn't go with any religious sentiment, like other, as mentioned by Mr. Arjit Sen, that in Bangladesh there are many religious groups like Harkatul Jihad and many other. So ISKCON is also same a religious sentiment group from Hindu community. ISKCON doesn't represent
Major
all
Rezaul
the
Karim,
Hindus.
my question was,
Yeah.
this arrest would have shattered the Hindu community. And it...
Yeah, I'm coming to your questions.
Yeah.
I'm coming to your questions. So the ISKCON, it doesn't represent the whole Hindu community because ISKCON was founded in 1966. But Hindu religion, it is thousand years back. So my respect to all the Hindu community people, but ISKCON is actually creating different sentiment in Bangladesh. And also Bangladeshi people, what they are doing to ISKCON, I fully don't agree with that. But ISKCON also need to be a bit more patient, and also the people and the government of Bangladesh also need to be more patient. But there is a gap in understanding, especially the ISKCON. They have been disputed for their role before. Like there are a lot of Hindu people like Bishwajit, Nipun Rai, Goyeshwar Chandra Rai. These are the people had been beaten,
Sir, this is not a discussion on Hindu religion, and this is not a discussion on who represents them. This is a very simple question I asked you, and a discussion on the fact that the Hindu community, which is about 8% in Bangladesh, they've said that they've been at the receiving end of a lot of attacks ever since there's been a power change that has taken place. all those
I got your
fears,
question.
all those
I got your
fears
question.
get further enhanced due to such arrests. Why was he denied bail?
I got your question, but fact is that actually the things happened. That is a different issue. The conspiracy behind the conspiracy. Here, the political motive
What
is working,
conspiracy?
keeping the religion at the front.
What
So
conspiracy, sir?
here, yeah, the conspiracy is that it's not exactly the ISKCON people. ISKCON is keeping at the forefront, but behind the ISKCON, there are some political figures with ill motive, like against the current government, some political parties, they are
Anjit
working and
Sen
they are
respond to
keeping the
that
ISKCON.
there's a conspiracy angle that the Bangladesh interim government has said is the reason why the Hindu priest is now being kept in jail and has been denied bail.
And
Well, there is no conspiracy at all
Chinmoy,
because, at the
Chinmoy
first
Das
place,
is not
if
for
you
Let
the
follow,
Hindu
Anjit
if you
religion,
had
respond.
followed,
not for the
Let
ISKCON.
Anjit respond, please.
No,
if you
I
had
need to
followed
answer
the
this.
words of Chinmoy Krishna Das very carefully, Major Razaul, one thing he very clearly said that we are not against anybody. Number one. Number two, we are not favoring any political party or the current government in place. We are equally Bangladesh. We are equally a Bangladesh citizen. So from that perspective, there is no way that ISKCON or the
Mr.
Bangladesh
Sen,
Sanatan
Mr. Sen,
Jagran
So do you think,
the
I
okay,
agree
government
with you.
okay,
Mr.
then
Sen, I
this,
agree with
okay,
you.
okay, okay, all right.
Just a moment.
Major
I agree
Rezaul
with
Karim,
Mr.
I'm going to ask you a
Yeah,
question and I'm going to give you a chance to respond
yeah,
also.
I need to answer
And I'm going to
something.
get a
I need to answer
counter from
something.
Anjit also. It's a very
Yeah,
serious
yeah.
issue and an issue that in fact ignites a lot of passions, which is why we are trying to have a very dispassionate, objective, unbiased discussion on it. The question is
Yeah,
that the
yes.
crisis of confidence that the interim government has when it comes to the minority community in Bangladesh. Do you think that gets amplified with Chinmoy Krishna Das not getting a bail and being
Then
jailed right now?
let me ask you before answering. Let me ask you one questions. There are 8 claims by the ISKCON. Why those 8 claims had not been raised during the army government period? Why it is raised at this current government period? Then my second question to you: have you checked the reasons for which the Chinmoy is arrested? There is a proven allegation against him that he was instigating for communal riots
No,
around the
he was
country.
speaking
And
peacefully and the gathering was peaceful, but let's get Ayanjit to respond to that. Ayanjit, respond to the fact that those charges that have been
I talked to
raised
the local detective
and
branch
made
officer. I talked to the
against
local
Chinmoy Krishna
detective branch
Das.
officer.
Well, the first thing is that you cannot impress upon sedition charges on a monk for saying something about a peaceful way of functioning of a democracy. If you consider Bangladesh
if it is
still a
true,
democracy
I
there
fully agree with you.
with
Mr.
Mubarak.
Shen,
Number two,
if it is true, what you
he
said,
very clearly
then I
said
fully
in
agree
both the
with you.
meetings, because it was said as sedition because he had adorned the saffron flag. But remember, it's not your country's flag. It was his flag, his organization's flag, nothing to do with your country. But the Bangladesh at the end of the day remains Bangladesh. So from that perspective, he didn't do anything illegal. And number two, most importantly, you said that it's proven. How can you prove a charge against somebody? The case is yet to, I mean, the case has gone to the court, but it has not been decided as yet. Just because of the way he spoke does not mean that at the end of the day, he is found guilty, number one. And number two, he very clearly said one thing, that I am not against any political party of Bangladesh or anybody to do with the current administration. We are just voicing our concerns, our feelings. From that
Okay,
perspective,
let's get in a
if you
very
take
quick
Yeah,
response
Mr.
from
Sen,
Dhaka,
in the TV
given
media,
the
we have
fact that,
seen
that
people had
there
been
are
there with
many who are
Trishul in the court
dissatisfied.
premises. In the court premises, people had been found there with the Trishul and they were behaving very extreme and kind of extremism
Okay.
was observed in front of the court. So, actually proven means there are a lot of
Sir,
videos,
nothing is
lot of
proven. There are only allegations.
statements
And what
available.
we are seeing are very disturbing visuals of people peacefully protesting being in fact at the receiving end of a crackdown. But this is an issue I'm going to come back
Maybe you
to
have
in
seen
the
the
next couple of
event,
days,
not the
because
live event.
unfortunately it looks
Maybe you have
like
seen the
this could be
event.
part of a larger issue that India has been raising diplomatically against Bangladesh, to Bangladesh on more occasions. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out your time and being on India Global. In fact, some of those visuals have been truly disturbing that have come in from Bangladesh. All right, shifting focus now to the other big story, which is that today marks the 16th anniversary of one of the most tragic and harrowing chapters in India's history, that is the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. 160 people lost their lives that day, 28 in fact, 26 foreigners, over 300 people were wounded. It was a 60-hour siege that left the city shaken and the nation in grief. But it was also a day that showcased extraordinary acts of courage and resilience from Mumbai's police, security forces and citizens, many of whom put their own lives at risk to save others. 26/11 was a day when Pakistan sent terrorists to attack India's financial capital. And as we remember the victims of the attacks, their families and the survivors, we also pay tributes to the countless acts of heroism and the resilience that followed the tragedy. All right, we're slipping into a very short break. We come back on the other side and talk more about China's BRI project, and is it in troubled waters? Stay with us. Welcome back. This is India Global. The key story that we are now focusing on is the latest that's unfolding in Nepal, where what one is seeing is shifting strategy of Kathmandu. The Prime Minister of Nepal is known to be very close to China, but there's been some movement and some very important developments that have happened there. In fact, China's BRI project could be in a lot of trouble when it comes to Nepal, simply because the Nepalese Prime Minister now is under tremendous pressure to not sign the BRI deal. Why? Because BRI is a loan-based venture. But the Nepalese Prime Minister is under pressure from his government and his coalition partners to only sign grants-based projects. That is, if China gives a grant, then the project will be approved. But if China gives those expensive loans, then it will not be approved. And that's the reason why there's now a lot of tension between Nepalese coalition partners as well as Nepal and China. Now, how does this unfold for India? There is reasons for some discomfort for India. The fact that the current Nepalese Prime Minister is close to China. He's already broken from tradition, decided to go to China ahead of New Delhi. That hasn't happened till now. But, well, there's a lot of churn that's taking place in Nepal and Nepal politics right now. But what India has been able to do in the last 4 years successfully, that is, talk about the BRI pitfalls, is now beginning to bear fruit. And that's exactly what we will be discussing in terms of what lies ahead going forward. Joining me on the broadcast is Ambassador Manjeev Puri, who's been the ambassador to Nepal in the past. And in fact, he joins me on the show right now. In fact, Ambassador Puri, you've been at the forefront of putting out some of these pitfalls of BRI to the intelligentsia and intellectuals, the society and the academicians at large. And one would say some of that is now bearing fruit with the Nepalese Prime Minister under immense pressure from his own government.
Gaurie, thank you very much. And you used an expression, troubled waters. That perhaps I'm not able to say, but certainly it's not smooth sailing. Now, without any doubt, this has something to do with coalition politics. Mr. Oli is actually the junior partner in this coalition. His party has a lesser number of seats than the Nepali Congress in the parliament in Nepal. However, he is the prime minister. He would have certainly wanted to go there and sort of redeem a pledge that he had made many years back, that he would bring Nepal onto the BRI stream. but the Nepali Congress has been firm. The geopolitics of it, you mentioned India. Let's also not forget the Western world, which also would have used its powers of influence on the Nepalese polity to tell them that, look, think through this. But I want to make another point to you. The Nepalese have been quite careful on the issue of taking loans and kind of pride themselves that while they are open to take grants and donations and so on, they haven't really fallen into a debt trap. Something which has been seen by many other places which have gone in for BRI projects. We know Hambantota in Sri Lanka and so on and so forth. So the BRI is not a smooth sailing in Nepal, which is perfectly fine from our side, from a geopolitical perspective. Uh, for the Chinese, it isn't smooth sailing in other parts of the world either. The Italians and several of the Europeans who were looking at the end side of BRI, they've also been saying they're pulling out, etc. So, and the Chinese economy itself is not in a hunky-dory state at the moment that you simply write off loans, give checks, and so on and so forth. So, look, it's geopolitics. It can't be hunky-dory and all good sailing for the Chinese. They also need to meet
I would say,
headwinds,
Ambassador
and
Puri,
that's
a lot
happening
of
right
the,
now.
I think there's been a lot of awakening in the Nepalese society also after the airport that didn't go as planned. In fact, the Pokhara International Airport was a wake-up call for people in Nepal. But talk to us about the fact that how unstable is the present government. They've been playing musical chairs the last couple of years. In fact, what do you think about the present government, given the fact that it's under a lot of pressure from Nepali Congress, the larger coalition partner, who's actually ensured, so far at least, that Nepal doesn't go and embrace those one-sided BRI loans?
So, Gauri, the Nepalese have been aware of what it means to interact with the Chinese, but they do it still, despite that. And they've not done it in the past few years. They've done it for many, many decades. That's the nature of Nepal, which considers itself some kind of yam between India and China. And so they believe very strongly that to have reasonable, good relations with China is important for them as a country. We should understand this. The Pokhara airport, the Bhairava airport, those things are clear. They are very well known to everyone. But yet, in the past, Mr. Oli as well as Mr. Prachand have gone ahead with the deals with the Chinese. The
Right.
Nepali Congress has stood firm. That is a very good sign. And it's also a sign of the relationships that we have with them, with the Western world has with them. No doubt about all that at all. But you're talking about the coalition. Look, these are the two largest parties in the parliament. And usually, you hope that coalitions are one large party, a few small parties get together, and there's a large opposition. This time,
Yes.
the opposition has become very small. Will they stay together? Will they not? They have solid reasons to remain together despite all these ups and downs.
Yes.
Why? Because there's a kind of power sharing. It's between the two of them, not, as they say, the smalls of the world getting a shot. There are
Yes.
three big players in Nepal. Mr. Oli, who leads the Communist Party, Mr. Sher Bahadur Dioba, who leads the
Yes.
Nepali Congress, and Mr. Prachand, who leads
Yes.
Maoist, which is a small group. But Mr. Prachand has invariably found himself becoming prime
Yes.
minister, playing on the fears of the larger players. So, difficult to say. Nepal is a place where Ayaram, Gayaram is the order of the day.
Yes.
People have no hesitation in changing sides, breaking each other, etc. In fact, people would say this coalition has
Absolutely.
already lasted 8-9 months. Well, by Nepalese standards, it's time.
Yes. Indeed, and that has several implications for New Delhi. In fact, thank you so much, Ambassador Puri, for speaking to me on India Global. And on that note, we're slipping into a very short break. We come back on the other side with lots more stories, including what's the latest in countdown to Trump 2.0. Stay with us. This is India Global. You're watching the big stories that are happening around the world and how New Delhi gets impacted on those. In fact, the one story that I think a lot of Indians are now going to be impacted is coming in from US universities. And in fact, this comes in our section Countdown to Trump 2.0, where we're talking about all stories that we need to keep a watch on as Donald Trump comes into office in 2 months from now. And the latest is that US universities have been now emailing international students and staff advising them to return to the campus before President-elect Donald Trump takes office, which is on 20th of January, and amidst concerns over his plans for mass deportations. Now, how does this impact Indian students? Well, they are now the largest students coming in from any international area outside of the US. A trend they've actually beaten after 15 years, which means that there will be a very large number of undocumented students coming in from India as well. There are a total of 4 lakh undocumented students. Several of them are likely to come from India simply because India now sends the largest number of international students to US universities. Now, how does this impact the students? What is the recourse they have, the legal options, and of course, how soon there should be a plan in place is exactly what we will now be focusing on. And let's get in guests joining me on the show. Sameer Kedekar, who's joining me from California, and we have Varun Singh, who's an immigration expert, joining me as well. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out the time speaking to me on India Global. Let me start with you, Sameer. You're sitting in California where, well, the one thing that everybody's talking about is what is going to be Trump's mass deportation plan looking like. He said again and again that he's going to focus on those who have a violent history and those who are national security threats. Of course, undocumented students do not qualify as being at the top of the list. But how important it is for students to now have a plan in place after 20th of January?
Well, this is a complicated topic. I think it's important to distinguish between those that are undocumented, meaning they don't have visas, right? They don't have the permission to stay or be in the U.S., versus student visa holders. If somebody has a student visa, they are not undocumented, okay? So the schools that are sending messages out to their students are just trying to be out in front of any travel bans that the president may issue when he takes office on January 20th. The last time he was president, he issued unexpected travel bans at the very outset
A travel ban
of his presidency. Yes.
this time around as well?
We don't know what he's going to do, and because everybody wants to be out in front of what might happen, universities just feel a responsibility to make sure their students are back in the U.S. before January 20th in case any travel ban is issued.
Right. Varun, then let me ask you this, that as an expert on immigration, what do you think or how is it that you are going to advise those who are seeking advice as far as immigration is concerned, those who are likely to be impacted? What is your 1 or 2 key areas or advice that you're giving?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Gaurie. See, we need to also understand the Indian families, especially the South Indian families, mainly from Telangana or Andhra. If you see the numbers, they are the largest contributor for the education in United States. And there are a lot of issues have come across where a lot of universities and colleges which are not listed or they are not licensed. In fact, students have been going to US just for the sake of getting a foreign exposure. US exposure means basically the US dreams. So according to me, I believe whatever Trump is doing and whatever he is going to do, it is for the betterment for his country and for the people and increasing the border security.
No, of course it is. That's why he's been elected. But what I'm saying is that what is your advice to those who are seeking to study there, who are already studying there? What's your advice for them? That's what I'm saying.
See, advice, I can only say that let them not divert from their education and get into anything else which is in regards to political or any kind of shows which is basically which is out of your studies parameters. So I will always advise the parents and the students who go to education that they should focus only on completing their education, nothing else. And once they complete their education, then their pathway for jobs and the residencies, it becomes very clear. And choosing the right universities, choosing the right colleges, right course, this becomes a very important factor at initial step, because the consultant's role is to help and protect the students because they don't have that exposure and expertise to know after education and during education.
Okay.
So we advise that, of course, you should have a cross-check,
Samir,
background check.
okay, all right, Varun. Samir, talk to us about the kind of concerns that students are raising, and what is the kind of counsel that can be provided.
Yeah, so I think when looking at what might happen, you want to look at what happened in the past presidency. In the past presidency, the Trump administration tried to make it very difficult for students to maintain their status in the U.S. They tried to create very harsh penalties for messing up, your paperwork or falling out of status and things like that. We anticipate they might try to do the same thing this time around as well. So my advice to students and their parents, we're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds. These are basically children, right, who are learning how to be responsible in this world. But the responsibilities for maintaining your paperwork as a student visa holder are very difficult. Many grown adults would mess that up. So my advice to the students and the parents are to make sure they work in lockstep with their universities, make sure they fully understand their obligations as students in terms of paperwork, reporting their classes, reporting their employment and their internships, and all of their responsibilities. The schools do a very good job of providing information to them. Just make sure that you are very well aware of what those responsibilities are so that you don't run afoul of the immigration rules.
Okay, now I want to address the bit about undocumented students. Yes, there are those who are legally studying there and those who are very much on a valid visa. But talk to us, Samir, about the undocumented students. The numbers seem to be significant. How much of it is going to impact India?
So the undocumented student population is definitely in the shadows. Many call them DACA holders or dreamers, okay? And some schools allow them to attend their schools and others don't. So there's not a lot of information on that. But certainly anybody who's undocumented in the US is at risk of being caught up in this deportation process that Trump and his staff are talking about. So if one does not have a visa in the US, then I would be concerned and certainly seek the counsel of immigration attorneys.
All right, Samir and Varun, thank you so much for taking out the time and really explaining to us the significance of what Trump's planning to do and how it may impact Indian students. Really appreciate you taking out the time. In fact, shifting focus now and staying, in fact, with Countdown to Trump 2.0. Another very important story that's coming in is about, tariffs. It's not a surprise, something that Donald Trump has said all along in his campaign speeches, and something he's also likely to come good on given the fact that it's an extension of his earlier administration policies, which is, tariffs to be imposed on Canada, Mexico, goods coming in from these countries, and of course, China. 25% will be the tariffs that will be put on illegal immigration, on drugs that will be put on these countries. And in addition to that, of course, there'll be a further 10% tariff that will be put on Chinese goods. This has sent shockwaves throughout global markets, reigniting fears that there will be a trade war that will take place and it could upend decades of international relations. Speaking from his Mar-a-Lago estate, Donald Trump, President-elect, declared that the United States will impose a 25% tax on all products entering the country from these two geographies, and of course, as I mentioned, from China as well. There are several weeks to go for this to really take shape, and in the interim, China has begun singing a retaliatory tone. Its Washington embassy has said neither the United States nor China would win from any trade war, a departure from how it was in the first Trump administration when it was tariff hike being met by more tariff hike. It was a cycle of tariff hikes that went on. Now for China, the tariffs are a direct hit to its manufacturing industries, and this as the Washington imports from the Asian giant exceeded hundreds of billions of dollars annually. He said the new tariffs would remain in place until such time as drugs, in particular, of course, fentanyl, which is a major issue, and all illegal aliens stop this invasion of our country. Yes, those were his exact words. But it's not just China feeling the heat. Canada and Mexico, both of whom have long-standing trade agreements with the U.S., are also now at the center of a growing storm. The tariffs, if they do pass, which is highly likely, could severely disrupt the supply chains around the world, and particularly those that rely on North American trade, especially in industries like auto manufacturing, where parts flow freely across borders. Mexico, already grappling with economic challenges, warns that this could lead to job losses and higher cost for consumers going forward. All right, we're taking a quick break. We come back on the other side, talk more about the ceasefire that's been in the works between Israel and Lebanon. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching India Global. A big story that we're now focusing is the latest as far as the West Asia crisis that continues, where Israel's security cabinet is set to discuss the ceasefire deal that's been brokered between France and the US and try and find some sort of peace deal that could work in the long term. G7 and Arab ministers await news on the proposed ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah. The conflict continues to simmer. In the latest, multiple explosions were seen in Beirut's southern suburbs today morning, and the explosions caused loud booms and huge plumes of smoke. They were captured following each other consecutively on Tuesday. On the other hand, Hezbollah rockets and drone attacks on northern Israel seriously injured 2 elderly people and a soldier. In response, Israeli warplanes carried out strikes on the terror group's Lebanese stronghold. As the war drags on, Israel's security cabinet is now set to convene very shortly to discuss the proposed ceasefire. Among issues that remain is an Israeli demand to reserve the right to act should Hezbollah violate its obligations under the emerging deal. On the diplomatic front, outgoing EU foreign policy chief Josep Borrell has called for increased pressure on Israel to blunt extremists in the government who are refusing to accept the deal. Speaking on the sidelines of the G7 foreign ministers meeting in Italy, Borrell warned that if a ceasefire is not implemented, Lebanon, quote-unquote, will fall apart. Listen in.
On Lebanon, there is no excuses for a ceasefire. On the proposal agreement brokered by the US and France, Israel has all security concerns. There is not an excuse for not implementing a ceasefire. Otherwise, Lebanon will fall apart.
Now, the human cost of the war keeps on rising. Hundreds of mourners gathered on Monday under pouring rain for a ceremony ahead of a funeral of an Israeli Moldovan rabbi who was killed in the UAE. The UAE police have arrested 3 Uzbek nationals for killing of the rabbi, an attack that's raised concern for the Israeli community in the country. In fact, let's quickly now get in an update from Melissa Weiss, who is executive editor of the Jewish Insider, joining me from Tel Aviv to give us a sense of how things are unfolding right now. Melissa, thanks much for speaking to me. Talk to us about the ceasefire deal that's likely to, of course, be taken up by the cabinet, the prospects of it being passed, and how that could change the entire war from here on.
Sure. So the Israeli Security Cabinet is set to vote in the next few hours on whether or not to accept the proposal for a 60-day temporary ceasefire. It is expected to pass, though there might be some opposition. But ultimately, the question of what happens with the ceasefire comes down to enforcement. Will UNIFIL, will international troops, will there be enforcement of the parameters of the agreement? We know from what happened in 2016 with UN Security Council Resolution 1701, there was an agreement that clearly laid out the stipulations that each side would follow. We know that Hezbollah breached those agreements, and that is how we ended up in this situation today. So the key question comes down to whether or not the international community will be able or willing to enforce the stipulations in the ceasefire proposal.
All right, Melissa, thanks much for giving us that detail. And of course, we wait for what really comes out of that ceasefire deal and proposal. Shifting focus now to the other major war that we are tracking, which continues to, of course, have very disastrous global implications. That is the Russia-Ukraine war. It's been over 1,000 days and counting, and there seems to be no end in sight right now. Latest updates that are coming in is that Russia has fired 188 drones into Ukraine early Tuesday morning. And viewers, it is the highest number in a single night since the beginning of the war. Ukraine's military claims shooting down 76 of those weapons, adding it lost track of 96 of the drones. This comes after Russia claimed on Monday that its forces attacked Ukraine's energy facilities, as Kiev reported on the same day its troops were engaged in over 200 battles on the front line. According to Russia's defense ministry, the forces have captured another village in Ukraine's northeastern Kharkiv region, meanwhile upping its ante against Moscow and Kremlin. The Keir Starmer-led UK government has reportedly supplied Ukraine with dozens more of the Storm Shadow cruise missiles that have a range of about 250 kilometers, similar to the US Army tactical missile systems. In Italy, Ukraine's foreign minister joined his G7 counterparts for the foreign ministers' talks in Italy. Speaking to ministers, the Italian foreign minister said and pledged support to Ukraine. Listen in.
We want to back Ukraine. We are working for peace, but we don't have peace without justice. Justice, the freedom of Ukraine.
All right, shifting focus now to the big entertainment story on the show. Stars and creators from at least 21 countries gathered on the red carpet for the 52nd Annual International Emmy Awards from New York. And guess what? Indian actor Aditya Roy Kapoor and comedian Veer Das posed before getting to the gala where awards were given out. Das also spoke to reporters on the carpet before the ceremony, explained the connection between politics and comedy. Take a look at this report that tells you what all happened at that star-studded event.
Major platforms are here tonight.
For the first time ever, an Indian hosted the International Emmy Awards. Veer Das made history, bringing his signature humor to the stage. From taking jabs at OTT giants to making light of the famous Will Smith, Chris Rock Oscar slap.
I'm from Mumbai in India. It is very good to be here completely legally. I'm not a citizen. It's a very quick visit in and out. I was just here to vote.
Veer's sharp wit and fearless humor had the audience in stitches. But there was also plenty of recognition for outstanding talent across the globe.
It's a huge achievement to see our film and series.
Wow, such an honor. He looked me in the eye. He said, "You can do this."
I'm sorry I won. It's because you deserve it as well.
And thank you to the Academy. It's truly an honor.
The evening saw fierce competition in 14 categories, with 21 countries represented. Let us take you through the most important ones. The Night Manager, starring Aditya Roy Kapoor, was nominated for Best Drama Series. But the coveted award went to Drops of God, a French-American-Japanese co-production.
This is truly an honor. Drops of God brought international audiences into the world of wine in a way that we've never seen before. We're so grateful that it was embraced and celebrated in the way that it was.
In the acting categories, English actor Timothy Spall earned Best Actor honors for his powerful performance in The Sixth Commandment.
What I want to say to you is I know you're brilliant, you're fantastic, and I'm sorry I won. It's because you deserve it as well, all right? I really mean that, and I really, really mean it. So you're going to be disappointed, but you're really brilliant, and God bless you.
Performance by an actress goes to Akbad Churiman, Tren Charleston, Suki.
And in a standout moment, Thai actress Aukbab claimed the Best Actress award for her performance in Hunger.
To my team Hunger, my deepest gratitude go to my showrunner, Pi Khong Det, Pi Thong Di, my producer, and Pi Dom, my director.
And the International Emmy for Comedy goes to...
In the comedy category, Argentina's División Palermo took the prize.
División Palermo!
A night to remember as the international Emmys once again proved that television is truly a universal language, connecting us all across borders with incredible stories and performances.
All right, a big story coming in from the world of sports. Who would have thought a 13-year-old boy from Bihar will make history as the youngest ever player to be bought at an Indian Premier League auction? Vaibhav Suryavanshi was sold to the Rajasthan Royals for a whopping 1.1 crore rupees on day of the 2025 mega IPL auction in Jote. The Rajasthan Royals were involved, in fact, in a bidding war for the player with the Delhi Capitals, who pulled out after the Royals offer. Let's get in now, Osama, to give us all the details of a bidding war that no one would have expected, Osama.
Absolutely, nobody would have expected. And the big question, Gaurie, is what were you and I doing when we were 13-year-old? Certainly not playing cricket, and certainly not being auctioned at this mega event that took place in Jeddah, and two franchises fighting over both of us. This little boy, 13-year-old Suryavanshi, Vaibhav Suryavanshi, he has in fact created history. He is the youngest ever player to be playing at the Indian Premier League, one of the toughest T20 leagues in the world. And what a proud moment for this 13-year-old and his family. Remember, he comes from a very small town in Bihar, Samastipur. And at just the age of 12 years, he, in fact, started playing first-class cricket. He, in fact, participated in the Ranji Trophy, which is, again, one of the premier test championship in this country, and that basically sets the benchmark for every player who wants to take that next step and play for their state and play for their countries. And remember, at the age of 13, he was then selected for the under-19 Indian cricket team, which is again something that is absolutely unheard of, something that him and his family would be really, really proud of. Again, at the Youth Test Championship, this is also a first. He scored a century right on his debut, and that too of 58 balls. And that is basically what caught the eyes of a lot of these franchises. Remember, Delhi Capitals and Rajasthan Royals, both these franchises, they had called Vaibhav Suryavanshi for trials. And in both the trials, he was given a task to score 17 runs in 1 over. What he did was, again, something that nobody expected. He scored 3 sixes in both these trials of the very first 3 balls. And then that bidding war started in Jeddah.
Wow.
So absolutely a great addition to Indian cricket, and we'll all be hoping and waiting for him to shine at the upcoming Indian Premier League.
Absolutely, Osama. I can't do anything about my childhood, but I can most certainly give this as an inspiring story to my children. Thank you so much for telling us what an inspiring story that is. All right, on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of India Global. Thanks so much for watching.